how we calculate 1 + 1 = 2 is actually not right.
We believe things for so long, and then, that wasn't even accurate.
I mean, my thought of end of life was like, there's this plane, and then there's that plane, and I go there.
Man, they got a kick-ass world up there.
I think that when we die, we come back as... Welcome back to the Alpha Hour podcast, where a couple of betas try to pretend like we're alpha.
I thought you had your big deal.
No, I do. All right, so I was thinking about what happens when we die. I was meditating the other day, and I was like, okay, what happens when we die? And I thought about it when I was by myself, and then I thought about it on mushrooms. So I have a hypothesis of what happens when we die.
Ooh, this is fun.
And here's the thing with speculating on death is that nobody knows. Nobody has any clue. So you
have the near-death experiences.
You can speculate because nobody truly knows if, okay, is that what happens when you die? Like, yeah, you're dead at that point in time, but you come back to life.
Well, nobody can prove it. Right?
Exactly. It's like the Catholic Church. Like, you can't prove that God is real. They just think there is. So they're kind of speculating. So why can't we speculate about death? So
let it rip.
Here's my thought. I think that when we die, we come back as a different person within the world. So I think that all of us have lived many lives over the past hundreds, thousands of years. And I think we all come back in a different body, a different experience. And you guys know have you ever had deja vu? I'm sure you have. I think that is like a glitch in the Matrix, the system, to where you start to remember something that did happen in one of your past lives, but you're like, why do I remember that? It's a glitch.
Reincarnation is a definite staple of certain religions.
Yeah.
And a lot of those religions, I do believe, have the reincarnation based on like levels of how you behaved in the previous life. So I think that
if you're a really bad person in this life, you're going to have a horrible next life.
Well, I think you're going to start a little lower on the rung.
On the totem pole.
Yeah. Now, Grant, I mean, listen, this isn't.
We're speculating,
right? Again,
because we can,
right?
Because nobody knows what happens. We're allowed to speculate however we want, and I think that we've lived multiple lives, many lives.
I hope so.
Yeah. Why do you think that? So, like, you had these thoughts. Like, what leads you to have this hypothesis? Like, do you have any deja vu being one? Anything else where you're like, this is why I believe that, or think that?
Because I think it's fun to think about.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Why not go into death imagining how you think it's going to be?
Yeah.
Because you have no clue, right? So what's the harm in me imagining, hey, when I die, I'm going to come back to life as a different person in a different life on this world? Maybe it's 1 year later, 100 years later. At some point, I'm going to. Because what does it matter? You know what I mean? What does it matter what you think happens when you die? As long as it makes you happy at the point of when you die, who cares? Quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Fully Loaded Tobacco-Free Chew. Check out the description of this video or the show notes to get 20% off your next order.
Well, that is a lot of the research surrounding psilocybin with end of life, right? A lot of people that are terminal with cancer, what have you, a lot of their research studies are based on that.
End of life things?
Yeah, it's giving them, some idea of like happiness going into this, people with end stage terminal cancer and stuff. And that is interesting. I mean, I know like my experience on mushrooms was different, but I mean, my thought of end of life was like just there's this plane and then there's that plane and I go there. And that's a very simple. I really had a hard time describing it, but like that's what I got from it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, good. Like, and I like in my head now, I'm like, yeah, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, and well, that does make sense because
one little trip, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, good.
With the end of life stuff and mushrooms, the more you do them, the more I've done them, I've realized, oh yeah, when I'm about to die or if I have some terminal illness, please give me as many mushrooms as I want. Like, let me trip all the time because it's such a. I've had a lot of positive experiences that I get it, but I what do you guys think happens when you die?
All right, so
because none of us are I grew up Catholic, but I'm not Catholic, so I don't really have any.
Well, you have that baseline structure to like inform your decisions.
Yeah,
we have the same Catholic school and whatnot. And sometimes I feel like if you get that jammed into you at a young age, and it's like going to school for 7-8 years, like reading the Bible, going to mass every Wednesday like we used to, hearing the same stories over and over, you like end up veering away from it. And then there's people that don't have that happen, and then later on they find God in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I'm not practicing Catholic religion anymore, obviously. But I hope there's something, but I always have this like cross between like wanting there to be some sort of reincarnation or this afterlife where everything's happy-go-lucky.
Afterlife is better than reincarnation.
Yeah.
If
but
we had
like,
to pick,
as long as there's something, like versus just flatline,
like,
you're just decomposed.
heaven sounds way more appealing than like coming back as like some like dude in the streets.
Yeah.
Like that does not sound as cool. Like if I could like just float forever with like all my pals and like my dogs.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I guess
sweet.
I don't want to come back as a kid that a dude that paints his nails, wears a man purse.
No, I don't want any of that.
And dyes his hair. And
I could come back as a woman. Can you imagine?
I no,
fuck
I
a
couldn't.
lot.
Yeah, because I'm doing so much of it now. No, but that just does. I like me. I want to be me. I don't want to be somebody else. So it's like that's why the afterlife thing is sweet.
Okay, so you buy into the whole afterlife.
I don't know.
Well, okay, but here's the thing: if you said, Jarrad, what do you actually think happens when you die? I would say we just die and that's it. But that's why I like to put the fun element in it and think to myself, oh yeah, maybe we do come back as another person.
From a pure speculation standpoint, if I was going to be like, all right, a
Have fun.
fun idea
Yeah,
that would
have
be,
fun.
all right,
That's
we
what I want.
are matter. We have all these atoms and such in us. We have every chemical characteristic. We're all carbon based. What have you? Everything on Earth is.
Mm-hmm.
What if we die, we decompose every one of our little carbon atoms and this atom and hydrogen and this, and they all kind of just become back one, and everything on Earth is all one kind of plane of existence where all of these things are combined and we're all just one. The only difference is that our conscious, our brain, kind of our soul, if you will, was then kind of pulled out of that, and that went somewhere else, and we existed on another plane of consciousness. So our soul then filled not necessarily carbon atoms in this carbon-based life form, but we went to a different plane where in that plane we are just existing as our soul.
So okay, so listen.
Hey, like it's fine because
That's some speculation.
At the end of the day, your body's buried and you decompose, whatnot. You get through the soil, and then
Hey, you're gonna become a
somehow
tree or
become
something.
a tree, whatever it might be, or a little ant of some sort of insect. Yeah, I could like get down with that for sure. But that's where it's like I have this cross with like actual science versus like what I hope to just be this happy-go-lucky, like yeah, this other plane that you're talking about.
That'd be
But
sweet.
at the end of the day, I'm like, I think you're just flatlined and lights out.
And that's it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not as fun, that's for sure.
It's definitely not as fun. I mean, think about near-death experience. So that's always one where that's about the closest thing we have to proof, per se, of what is occurring when you're dying. And then the problem is then you can kind of explain those things away by, like, the ocular reaction. But everyone always says there's a light. You're going to the light. You have this feeling of, like, overwhelming euphoria. It's like, what is that?
Okay, but flatline, explain this to me because I guess I don't know the technicalities, but flatline is where your heart just stops beating, right?
Yeah, right.
But
You're not dead.
there's some sort of activity that's got to be going on in your
Correct.
brain, right? So
Yeah.
even though the heart's not pumping, there's still activity in the brain,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So even if you're and that's probably what people are
As soon as it's deprived of oxygen long enough, then it will not be able to function.
So then why couldn't it be like when I have dreams and I feel like I'm dying because I have sleep apnea and I'm essentially dead because I'm not getting any circulation or I'm not breathing in any oxygen, I'm essentially dead too. So, but none of those dreams that I have about when I'm choking on something, when I'm dreaming, having sleep apnea, none of those dreams are actually real. So what if these near-death experiences are just people who are
could be-
dreaming, right?
yeah.
Because their brain is still functioning.
Yeah. It could be
So that's
simply
why-
just the reaction of the brain. Like it could be that the ocular nerve is getting less oxygen, and so they're seeing this tunnel of light. I mean, it could be simply that, and you could explain it away, or it could be the other thing. It could be that they're all going into this other whatever, and maybe that's it. I don't know. I mean, who knows? We're speculating again, but
I know.
I'm saying like
What do you think? Molly has these thoughts?
no.
Absolutely. not.
Yeah, that's why I always think like we've just evolved.
Molly
over,
is
like,
my dog, by the way.
Yeah. Like these 20,000 years, I always go back to that. It's like we're one rock, like in this universe. We always think that we're like almighty and like so much better than everything else. But it's like, why we're the only ones? Humans are the only things that matter, and we have this afterlife, and nothing else that lives in this universe
And
does.
maybe they do too. Maybe
Yeah,
they.
I mean,
maybe they.
I always go back and forth with that too. It's like, yeah, we put ourselves on a pedestal a lot.
We do put ourselves on the pedestal, but we also are the only things that are self-aware on the earth. You know what I mean? Like, there's just not. Everything else is just walking around doing what's programmed in their little brains. And
I mean, are
we're
they-
actually able to consider things that are outside of this.
Yeah.
But how can you measure that? How do we know that
It is weird. I don't-
other animals or plants they don't feel that?
The plants are actually. I think the plants are more interesting than the animals. I think we know more about animals than we do plants, because all these plants are all intertwined and working together
Underneath
and
the ground.
communicating, and all that is going on. So I think we know less about plants than we do. Like, I think we know a lot about dogs. I think we know a lot about mammalian brains. I think that we don't know nearly as much. And I think there could be animals that maybe are self-aware and we're not aware, like dolphins. Dolphins are one of the very few animals that will have sex for pleasure. It's like, I don't know, they might be aware.
That's
of
pretty close to human.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could be aware of something. So maybe it's just us and dolphins in heaven.
What about octopus? Aren't those
I think they're
really
pretty aware,
smart?
too. I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you prove
Yeah,
self-awareness.
how do you measure that? Because we know even with, like you said, plants, how they're so interconnected underground. There's even trees that when there's trees that are dying off and they know that they're dying, they'll essentially send their nutrients to other growing younger trees to help them grow better because it almost knows knows that it's dying.
Yeah. Oh, there's a. There's a community.
And I did not have this thought on mushrooms. I believe that's a fact.
It
I
is.
believe
No, it
they
is.
measured it.
They've
Could
shown
you like
that.
see the colors and like how it was sending these nutrients? It was like vibrant colors going through.
I
its
think it's
roots.
slow.
No. I think they put some sort of fluid in the ground, and they followed it. They did. I don't know how they did. They did X-rays of
Oh,
the
I
ground.
thought you
and-
did this in your brain.
No. This is real.
I think that's science.
Trees actually do this. This is
They are. They're
I
all
thought you had this
connected.
epiphany like on this trip where you're just watching and like this tree is just sending life elsewhere and it lived on through another
That'd be
younger
pretty
plant.
slick.
That is trippy, which goes back to once you eat mushrooms and trip on mushrooms, you realize that everything in the world is trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Us sitting here is very trippy. Watching somebody walk out of the store that you've never seen, never met in your life is trippy. You're like, what is this person doing? This
When
is
you
so
stop
weird.
and just pay attention to stuff, like not to say it was a trip, but like life, like last night we ate dinner on my deck and like I got some big oak trees go up hundreds of feet, but it's like its own little world up there. And I fucking saw a raccoon. It had to be like 80 feet up. I didn't know raccoons would climb that high for like whatever acorns. I don't know. I'm like, does he know how to get down? Like I get like, but then as I was just staring up at these trees, I'm like, it's kind of badass up there. Like if you could just hang out up there in those trees and they're connected, they cover like probably 100 yards worth of like area. I'm like, there's his own little world, and then you just see all these birds up there. It's its own little.
It's a tree.
ecosystem.
It's a tree house.
It's just a boring tree. Normally, every day we're down here stressing about our stuff, and I'm like, man, they got a kick-ass world up there.
Well, I think the
fun.
indoor world and the outdoor world are like everything we make sucks. Like when you look at a house, it's like, all right, it's got fucking walls and shit. Like it's really lame. Like you go look at a single tree and you look at the tree, you look at the bark, you look at the animals, the leaves, the color changes of them, the moss growing on them, the vine. Like there's a lot to examine there. Where if I'm just looking at my house, I'm like, okay, that's a wall with paint, and there's a door. Like there's just not that much excitement. So like nature is dramatically more complex than the environment that we've built for ourselves as humans. The environment we built for ourselves is crap compared to nature.
And nature is so. It's natural, right? It
Yeah.
exists on its own. It grows on its own. And I mean, you might look at it and be like, wow, the way that tree's growing is really ugly, but it's so natural that there's some sort of
It
beauty
happened for
within
a
it,
reason. Yeah,
right?
it happened for a reason. There was a split. There was a bad windstorm. There was a this that had more sunlight on this side. So then the cells decided that as they shifted this way, it was better and more advantageous to go this direction. Like, yeah, there's
But
a lot
if
to
you
it.
look at it, it also looks like chaos.
Yeah, it is
Also,
chaos.
it is chaos, but there's some beauty within that chaos
yeah.
as well.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah, no,
Like you brought this up about death though, so going back to it, like, is it specific to like humans in your thought process? Because it's one thing, like obviously we've talked previously on podcasts about, like, I mean, we could be the end of our own demise. Like obviously we weren't always here. Whatever, going back in Earth's history. So let's say something catastrophic happens and it's like boom, whatever, all human existence like is exploded. From that point, do you think your conscious still somehow lives on and would go into like a 10,000 years from now when things clear up, we become another version of some dinosaur or something, whatever would happen to pop up?
reincarnation does get trickier if there's no more people.
So you think that the whole conscious and this deja vu experience, like, yeah, I had a prior life, is just based on whatever 20,000 years ago or ballpark when we first started to exist? Like within that little network, it started with a couple of us, and then the population grew, and your kind of consciousness divides and gets spread out, and like you're pieces of prior humans in this sense, like, because obviously there was not like billions of us like just 100 years ago. So as that happens, like where
When
does
you
your
really
mind
think
go
about
with
it, though, like if you have a child, you are reincarnated. 50% of you. You know, you're saying like pieces of your consciousness, like even with epigenetics and things, like you're sending. So yeah, what I was saying is that you're speaking about like living on and immortality and this kind of thing. What if it's just that the immortality that you have is your genetic code that you're then passing on to another generation? So you're literally taking half of yourself and you are putting it into the future. It's not as religious per se, but it is.
that would be cool. I get it. So
Well,
you're
you are.
kind
I mean, that's legitimately
I
what
want
you're
to
doing.
believe, so I need to reproduce to live on.
In a way. Well, I mean, actually, yeah, if you had a strict view of the world where there is no spiritual anything, and the only thing in the world is the physical part of the world, when you think about it in that way, there is a way to live on. Not you, but half of you.
Yeah, and then you become like your pieces of, like, obviously your parents had parents. It's like you're technically like 4, and then like really you're this matrix of.
But then in that
thousands.
sense too, so you don't have any control of the genetic part of it, but if you're raising the kid, then you actually have some control of the kind of the arrow where it's pointing, as far as like, is it going to end up, your genetics are going to be in a good position, a bad position. So that's kind of a reincarnation of sorts in a very scientific manner.
But you're still not passing on your own consciousness,
No,
which I
no.
think consciousness is what makes people different from a lot of other things and different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because consciousness is a funny one, because every part of our body we can essentially take out of ourselves and we can observe it in a medical sense.
Mm-hmm.
But your consciousness, we know it's a thing, but you can't take a consciousness and look at it under a microscope.
no
You
science.
can't observe it
No science.
physically. But you can observe it in your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that a lot when I'm meditating. They tell you to kind of, okay, notice your consciousness, and you're like, oh my God. Once you realize that's a thing, you think to yourself, what is happening?
Yeah, and it's not a very religious guy per se. Like that idea, you understand how someone, particularly someone 1,000 years ago, would sit there and be like, "That's the soul." You know what I mean? That is the soul. And now that's the thing that's crazy is now, say 1,000 years on, like now, what is that? Like there's these, the wackos, like the transhumanist wackos that are like, oh, I'll just download my brain and put it into a robot, and it's like, I don't think it's gonna work. Like, I think you can put all the data in my brain. If you could somehow convert that to a little chip and plug it into a robot, that ain't me.
No, that's still the consciousness part is not
It's not there. That you have all my data, but there's something else there, right? I
Yes.
mean, it's not just this. It's not just data. Like there's something making me think these things. There's something giving me these ideas, and even beyond the conscious, the subconscious. There's something there, and no one knows how to explain it. And I think that when you get too scientific about it, you end up being lost. It's like Max Planck. Remember that physicist? He's a German physicist, won the Nobel Prize. And one of his famous quotes was that at the beginning of, I'm going to fuck this quote up.
Just try.
Essentially, it is that at the end of every scientific endeavor, there is religion. And at the beginning of every religious endeavor, it was that basically at the beginning of someone who's religious, they have religion. At the end of someone who's very scientific, they have religion. So his thing was that he got so far in physics, and the guy won the Nobel Prize, and he got to a point where he could not explain what was going on, and so he had to have faith in things, and he had to have faith in things, and also in people that came before him. So all of these established things, like think about like Einstein. It's not like he was able to really sit there and be like, oh, you know, he couldn't break down every piece of physics that came before him. He was working on their knowledge and having faith that what they did was correct.
Yeah, what if everything we believe in science, and we'll go with math, is incorrect?
Yeah.
Right? Like how we calculate 1 + 1 = 2 is actually not right. Like if the basis of mathematics is incorrect, then nothing.
It gets weird.
Nothing is right.
That's what I'm saying. We have faith, and that's what the Max Planck thing was. At the end of this, guy went through everything, and he got as far as he could in physics, and he reaches a point where it's like anything beyond this, string theory, these sorts of things, that's religion.
Yeah,
you've made up a religion. I'm not saying it's like a good religion, but it's a religion. You don't have proof of it. You're going based on like faith that this is going to be what it is, and so it's like. I get that idea.
No, I 100% get it, because the more that you know, the more you realize that you don't know what the heck is going on.
Well,
you know what I mean? You have
every time we think something for sure. A matter of fact, Einstein, for instance, he had to prove people wrong over and over.
Yeah.
Like we believe things for so long, and then oh shit, that wasn't even
No,
accurate.
we always.
And then
what's
the
proven
proven to
to
be
be now.
the new accurate will again be proven to
Correct.
not be accurate again and again. Yeah, no doubt.
And it's the same thing with this consciousness thing, where I'm always like, they try and like act like, oh, you could download this and do. I'm like, we don't know what that is. We have no idea what that is.
Yeah,
the brain is like this lost thing to these people, and whenever you find someone that acts like they're an expert on these things, I'm always like.
Well, it's just like, you know, right now we're trying to create artificial intelligence, and we want to get these things to think on their own. And yeah, we're putting the data in there, but it goes back to missing. It doesn't have that consciousness to where it's thinking on its own. The only reason it's thinking what it is because we put the inputs in there, and it's starting to make its own connections.
Right.
Hopefully, that's what's going to make it really conscious, if you will. But it's still not conscious.
And maybe it could eventually, but. Just having data points that connect in a computer, I don't know if that makes you conscious.
I don't think it does.
Maybe that's what we are. I don't know, but like there's something more to it.
Yeah, well, it's like over your life experiences, I think your emotions evolve, your feelings towards certain things evolve, like you change, your conscious changes. I think mine does. I mean, there's several things, like the 20-year-old version of me doesn't think and feel the same way I do now about certain things.
Well, it shouldn't, right? You should evolve.
Hopefully it does. Or else you'd have a do-rag on right now, and you'd be still blaring Eminem every single day of the week.
Not talking material things, but no, with that said, like at a certain point, like artificial intelligence and robots per se, like if it monitors like a human and how they evolve, maybe it can make its own connections. But yeah, it's never going to be the conscious that we are.
That is the AI web. I mean, what they do, the way that they make AI is they essentially just take all the data from the internet and put it into the computer. I mean, that's like they're taking all the responses, all those things, all the comments, and this.
Yeah, you got to keep feeding.
That's what that is. What it is, and it is weird. There was that goofy guy from Google who like said that it was conscious or self-aware or what have you, and it's like then you go and you read what it's like. It's just giving you responses.
Yeah, it's,
you know, it's you're like saying, "Are you self-aware?" And it's like, "Yes, I'm self-aware."
Yeah. Are you?
How do you prove that? Or how do you disprove it? You know, I mean, it's saying it's self-aware. Is it self-aware? I don't know, but how do you prove it one way or the other? It's a computer. It's a weird one.
Yeah. But I hope we're all hanging out and doing podcasts in this other world when we all die.
That'd be sweet.
It would be fun.
We'll probably look back and be like, we were goobers. Like, I always think about that too when we do stuff like this, like in the moment. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we're hanging out with our bros, like talking about stuff. But like my grandfather would be like looking down, like, what is this idiot doing? He's setting up a camera in front of him, like videotaping himself talking into a microphone.
Yeah.
Like,
But you're going to think that same thing, and we're going to think that same thing about ourselves in 20 years, because everything, if you think about it, is cringy. You know the feeling of cringe when you see something? Everything we do in life is cringy after the fact. Like right now, this feels like normal. But in 10, 15 years, we might look back at this and be like, we are so cringy.
Yeah.
Right? So every moment in your life is essentially cringy.
Well, and your thoughts are going to
But
be
you don't-
so much different. Like, 5 years ago, my thoughts were different. 5 years from now, I'm going to think differently. If I didn't, it would
That's
be
a problem.
weird.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And the problem is these people that actually get too rigid and don't change their minds. Those are always the people where I'm like, I don't really want to be around them too long. Like if you're someone who's thinking the exact same way you did think when you were 20 or 30 or what have you, it's like, no, you better evolve a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
you should learn more, and you should have wisdom, and you should grow old. And like really, the wisest people should be the oldest people in our society, barring dementia.
Yeah, there's a picture that makes me think about that. It's a picture of a caterpillar sitting in one chair and then a butterfly sitting on the other. And the caterpillar, the caption above it says, "You've changed." And then the butterfly is like, "We're supposed to."
Yeah,
Right?
I like
It's
that.
yeah.
That's a good one.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I like that. Right. You're gonna get
You're
smarter. You're
supposed
gonna
to.
get better.
Yeah,
You
you're
should.
if you don't, that's a problem.
Correct.
You know? And I think the best way to do that is to be almost radically open-minded to a lot of different things, to change.
Well, then to wrap it up, I think we're pretty clear here. We have no effing idea what happens when you die.
And we don't know we don't even know what we're doing right now. Like, what is happening? I don't know.
is this right or is this wrong?
Did we die previously? Is this like another layer of heaven?
Yeah, it goes back to my idea that
Yeah.
we live
But
multiple
what if
lives.
there's
My
like
fun idea. We
what
live
if there's
multiple
like
lives.
5 layers? Like this is like the next dimension, and then if we go to the next one, then like heaven's like 5 up. Like we're only on like
we're not even there
dimension
yet.
3.
Yeah, it's like the haunted house, the 20 levels.
Yeah.
of
Like
hell,
we're
or
on
whatever
we're on
it
the
is.
3rd level.
Yeah.
Like we did something, we were on like a total different plane before, and now we're like on this one, and then we go to the next one, and then
So you just climb this ladder, and then
Yeah.
finally, at one point, it's
or
like,
maybe
we
you
made
don't
it.
ever. Maybe you just go through dimensions. Like we just think this is the only existence, but there's like another one after that.
Yeah. I
I
think you're right.
I think we have no idea.
I think we all. I think we actually just figured it out.
Okay, yeah.
We figured it out. Thanks for checking out this podcast. Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button before you go. If you want to watch us continue the conversation, then click on this video to your left next. Quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Fully Loaded Tobacco-Free Chew. Check out the description of this video or the show notes to get 20% off your next order.